Okay. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Can you check with folks now? I think you're on now.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, everybody.
Hey, great, we're here. Starting again. Thank you all for your patience. This is Frank Ordway, Assistant Director at the Department of Early Learning, and I'm joined by Christopher Stanley, Dell's Budget Director, and we are here to discuss our request for the 2017 and 19 biennium. We're going to go through a set of slides, and then we'll dive into the details of our budget request. We will have a significant amount of time this morning for Q&A, and we will also provide an email for all of you to send in questions after you've had a chance to actually look at the details of our packages. And we will provide a link for you to see all the packages, the complete packages that were turned in yesterday afternoon. All of our investments that you will see in this package are in service of ensuring that 90% of children are ready for kindergarten by 2020, with race and family income no longer a predictor of readiness. We are also ensuring the health and safety of all children under our purview, and we are pursuing a continually improving and professional agency. The investments that we are proposing are in conjunction with initiatives already underway at the Department of Early Learning that provide a better business climate for providers, address issues illuminated in multiple audits, increase the consistency of our approach to contracting across all of our service sectors, and ensure that Dell is organized and resourced effectively to accomplish our mission.
The coordinated effort that we're proposing will ensure that proven services are going to increase opportunities for children and that those services are available to more families, and we want to ensure economic opportunity and stability for all providers. We also want to ensure that our public investments are transparent, accountable, and effective, and our total ask is $297 million.
It's important for folks, before we dive into the details of our asks, to recognize the environment in which we are operating. This slide is a little wonky, but it details the financial reality of the state of Washington and the current budget challenges that we will be facing as we enter the next biennium. Projected revenue, currently, the most likely outcome of projected revenue, does not cover our ability to even maintain current services. And so our asks go into an environment which will be incredibly difficult for the governor and the legislature to produce a budget that meets all the basic needs of the citizens of Washington State. And of course, the asks of the Department of Early Learning, while we are confident in their quality, are also going to be joined by requests from agencies that work on mental health, public health, homelessness, the environment, overall economic health in the state of Washington, higher education, and of course we have the McCleary ruling as well. And so the challenge that we have in the state of Washington in terms of paying for all these basic needs is profound, and so we just want to make sure that people understand the gravity of the situation before we get into the specifics of our asks. We know that these asks are proven investments in evidence-based services for children and families, but there are a lot of other good services in our state as well, and we need to support both the governor and the legislature in ultimately producing a balanced budget. So now we will get into the specifics of our asks.
Our first request deals with improving the health and safety of children in our care, and there are three major components to it. The first component is expanding background checks and monitoring of FFN providers and those providers who are currently license exempt. For instance, providers on military installations or tribal providers, ECAP providers, those license exempt folks who they'll still be license exempt, but they'll be monitored every year. So we've got a request in for that staffing. We've got a request in for much more training and provider outreach to make sure that we are effectively serving the provider community. And then third, we have a request in for beginning to increase our efforts around enforcing the rules on care and really beginning to enforce unlicensed care and making sure that we have appropriate staffing in the field to deal with complaints and to deal with investigations and to find those places that really should be licensed but currently are not. And that total ask is approximately $11 million. The staffing component of that is 16 FTEs in the biennium. So our next package is the developing an efficient time and attendance system. This is something that is crucial to our success in implementing the Working Connections Child Care Program. For the past several years, we have received, in fact, I believe it goes back to when we were founded as an agency in 2006, we have received audit findings from the State Auditor's Office, who performs audits on behalf of the federal government. So these are federal audit findings. We've received federal audit findings around the internal controls of our process. And at this point, the feds have become so fed up that they have issued a disallowance letter disallowing approximately $23 million in costs, which means they want their money back. And they're pretty serious about it. So if, we're pushing back. OFM has pushed back and made an appeal on that amount. And we're going to keep talking about that. But in the meantime, we need to build this time and attendance system to significantly reduce the billing errors and potential overpayments that the state auditor believes are being experienced. This system would provide a live attendance data and on audit trail when errors or fraud are discovered. It'll really reduce the amount of time it takes to calculate hours when submitting invoices to DSHS and Dell for payment. So it'll really reduce that amount of office time spent billing us for the services that you're providing to kids in subsidized care. And then it'll also provide some more tracking data required by the Early Start Act and serve as a significant step towards addressing that backlog of internal control findings. We estimate that this system will cost approximately $15.6 million.
And we are beginning testing of a pilot this fall, and we are working with a mix of both home providers, center providers, and multiple languages to do some field testing on a time and attendance system that we hope will lead us to this solution.
Our next request is to preserve access to high-quality preschool, and this is the first slide you'll see in a series of slides where we really point out the direct impact that these requests will have. Some of you may have seen this chart before. It shows where we believe all of our children fall in terms of kindergarten readiness. And you can see that below 110% federal poverty level, there's a lot of work to do. And so our ECAP investment directly impacts that section of this chart. First, a slot rate adjustment. We've heard from a number of vendors that the amount of money it takes to actually provide an ECAP service is more than we're currently paying, much more, in fact. And so we are proposing an 8% slot rate increase to begin to bring the program rates up to comparable levels with Head Start. Second, we're also adding summer programming. We're starting to phase in summer programming to part day and full school day slots. And so that would be we would roll it out to 25% of the slots each year, so that by the 2021 school year, 100% of part day and full day slots would have some element of summer services.
Some of the oldest data we have in education indicates the profound impact of summer drop-off for students really in all grades. But we have very clear evidence in our early learning settings about the drop-off between services in ECAP and Head Start that are provided during the normal school year and when those children arrive in kindergarten. And so you can see that pink box for those of you who are on the webinar. By providing summer programming, we would hope to see and would expect to see a significant improvement in kindergarten readiness for the children who are served by ECAP by receiving those summer services. and it would also provide a better schedule and support for low-income parents who are trying to get back to work by having those services available to them in the summer. So in addition to the direct impact on the child, it will also provide increased stability for the parents.
And so the third part of our request deals with ECAP expansion and increasing the number of slots necessary to hit the entitlement goal by the 2021 school year. And we estimate that would be 1,850 slots a year for the next 4 years in order to make that goal. Finally, we've got an ask for $2 million a year for early learning scholarships, because as we've been increasing the requirements around quality for ECAP contractors, where are all these teachers coming from? We need to incentivize people entering the workforce, and we need to provide more support to people as they get into college, that they won't be overly burdened by student loans. So we're making this request to help incentivize people to become ECAP teachers and serve our youngest learners.
And before we move on from this slide, this presentation today is focused entirely on our operating budget ask. We also know, and many of you on the phone know, that we have a facilities challenge in ECAP in particular and in early learning in general. And we also have a capital budget request that we are happy to talk about on a future webinar or respond to questions specific to that. But we do have both legislation and a capital budget ask that are going in as well.
The next slide encapsulates three different requests that we're making. First is providing equal access to child care. The federal law, the Child Care Development Block Grant, requires states to provide equal access for eligible children to child care services that are comparable to child care services in the state or sub-state area involved that are provided to children whose parents are not eligible to receive assistance under this law. And so that's a direct quote from the statute itself. And so we are making a request to bring the child care centers up to the market rate and really make sure that all of the providers we pay subsidy to are equal to the private pay market. The second request that we're making is to eliminate the wait list. We're very close to hitting the budgetary cap on the Working Connections Child Care Program, and really we thought it would happen August 1st, and it hasn't happened yet, but we are extremely close. We watch the data every 2 weeks. In fact, last month we were checking it weekly, and we're very close. And so one of the things we want to do is eliminate that wait list so that all children have access to quality child care. And we estimate that that would cost about $75 million in the next biennium. The next request is to prioritize homeless families. And this involves changing the structure of how we deliver services to those families rather than contracting out the we would make them a prioritized group within the Working Connections child care system and transfer the administration of that function to DSHS, where the delivery of services happens for Working Connections child care program and the seasonal child care program.
This is an area that has gone through an immense amount of change. The providers of our state have been asked to do an immense amount of work over the last few years. There's been a lot of regulatory changes for the providers. And so our providers really need stability in their work in order to ensure that this care is available to our most at-risk children. And under the provisions of the Early Start Act, the effort that the providers are undertaking to ensure that their services are of high quality is really a remarkable effort that is going on that is being embraced by the provider community. And so these dollars not only will ensure access for families, but those families will be entering care and services being provided in family homes and in centers that are of increasingly high quality as we go forward.
So the final component of our request involves the birth to 3 services that we provide. First, we want to protect at-risk families with our home visiting program. And what we're really asking there is 2 different pieces. First is for sustainability of the current program. We are currently working with Thrive, and Frank can talk more about this, currently working with Thrive to adjust the administration of that program. And we're bringing contracting from Thrive to Dell. And so in that shift, I should say prior to that shift, there were some reductions that we had to make in order to balance the fiscal year. There was a reduction in federal funding, and there was a loss of private funding for, I believe, fiscal year 18 that we're coming up on. And so Thrive and Dell had to work together to make certain reductions, and those were not only slot reductions but also staffing reductions in order to balance the program's budget. And so what we're asking for is a partial restoration of those cuts. But not only that, but we want to expand those programs that have been really successful and those that show a lot of promise across the state. So we're asking for an expansion of the existing program as well. The total package is about $6 million. And then finally, the last part of our package revolves around safeguarding services to vulnerable children. And this is our Eclipse program. This is the program that serves very severely abused kids and kids that have experienced a lot of trauma. And the program has been funded through little one-time infusions of cash to backfill the loss of federal funding that we just experienced a couple of biennia ago. And so we're going to continue asking for permanent, ongoing funding for this program because these services are really critical to a group of kids that fall right in the middle of the types of services we provide.
So that was a very quick overview of a very complicated budget ask that we have made. You can see the entire package that we made on our website, dell.wa.gov/budget. All of the details are available that we submitted. And so we're going to open up now to questions. And we also want you to feel free to email communications@dell.wa.gov in order to send us any questions that you may have. Why don't we fix the typo on that slide if we can right now? And so we can get an email out to all of you, and you can send us in any questions. And if we don't get to them today on the webinar, we'll make sure to answer them in a blog form going forward, so we can make sure everybody on the call is informed about what we're doing. And with that, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor to questions.
Okay, so we've got a question here that asks, will we see how this $96.6 million breaks out? And that's referring to the ECAP ask. Yes. If you go to our website, dell.wa.gov/budget, we posted all of the detail behind each of these packages. And so you'll be able to see how the $96.6 million breaks out. In fact, one of the attachments is our proposed cost model, which actually takes each of the steps that we're asking for and breaks it out across all 4 fiscal years and by part day, full school day, and extended day slots.
We have a great question from Colleen Lang regarding some of our slides. And on the graphs where we identified the interventions and where our investments were going to go, there was a red math line. And indeed, Colleen, we do have interventions and supports planned specifically for math. While we're not asking for specific budget items in our budget request for that, we have ongoing efforts both in ECAP as well as in Working Connections Child Care to provide increased math supports to providers to try to address the math drop-off. And so our professional development efforts and other kinds of things we'll be doing to support providers across the state is being designed right now to address that math component. Math is the #1 presenting problem when it comes to kindergarten readiness across all income groups. And so if we can seek to address the math concern, we can have a big impact on kindergarten readiness across not only the children that we work with, but children in general in Washington State. We also have a question about the time and attendance system and about whether or not what kind of tools will be used for that. And it is our intention and is our hope to provide a system that is very, very easy for providers to use and that they would be able to use for both the children that they serve on state subsidy as well as private pay. We don't want you to be in a position of having to use multiple systems for the children that you serve, and that they would be usable on tablets and phones and PCs. So regardless of setting, that you would have a tool that would be easy for you to use, commonly available and used in most retail interactions that we all experience now, and that we would also be able to provide some grants and supports for folks who may be in locations that do not have ready internet access or do not have those kinds of access issues now. And we're going to be testing all of those systems in the field this fall.
Will the $2 million in scholarships be earmarked for ECAP? Are they intended to address workforce shortages? I believe they would be because they are part of the ECAP request. We have a separate scholarship program for our Early Achievers program, which is scholarships generally to increase the number of qualified teachers in child care centers. But this $2 million in scholarships is specific to the ECAP program. We also have a question about, can you share any more information on the ECAP slot rate increase? Well, I can tell you that we are trying right now. The part day slot rate is $7,578, and that includes an amount for contractors and an amount for Dell administration to implement services. We are Head Start, which is what we considered our comparable. The average part-day slot rate is $9,700. And so what we did was we are actually proposing increasing the slot rate every year, slowly, so that at the end of 4 years, we are at that Head Start comp.
And there's one question also related to the slot rate adjustments. What we are talking about in the slot rates are the payments that we make to providers. We are not looking for adjustments in eligibility levels. And there's a couple of questions that we've gotten related to eligibility levels. We are not considering or assuming any change in eligibility levels in our, we're not moving them up or down in our programs and our budget asks. Although one thing just for folks to be conscious of is that there is a ballot measure related to minimum wage that is going to be voted on this fall that could have an impact on folks' eligibility for these programs. And we know that ourselves and other agencies are wrestling with how we would approach if that ballot measure passes, that we might have some folks who will, even though they would have a slightly increased wage immediately, it would not fundamentally change their overall economic status. And we want to make sure that we are prepared policy-wise, to try to, make sure that we're not kicking people out of care who have it now simply because they got a very modest raise. And so that's going to be a challenge for not only Dell, but for all of the state agencies. And it's a good one to have, I think, but it is certainly on our horizon. But we do not make any plans in eligibility change in our request.
Here's a quick question we've got on what's the mix between ECAP full day versus extended day slots. The way we've broken out expansion in our request is that 70% of the slots we've requested would be full day, and 30% would be offered as extended day based on the projected need.
We've got a question related to our time and attendance system and related to ECAP. Yes, because ECAP is going to have to come under provisions of licensing, we would expect that the time and attendance system we would hope would be usable by ECAP, and that it would coordinate with our other state data systems, ELMS and Child Plus. But we can get into more detail about that one when we have the ECAP team on the call, which we do not at the moment. But it is our intention to have a system that is universally usable by all of our licensed providers. There's also a question related to our agency request legislation. We do have agency request legislation. We have agency request legislation that speaks directly to changing some elements of our advisory committee. We're seeking to have more of our critical partners to be part of ELAC, as well as an increased commitment to diversity on our advisory committee. That same piece of legislation also includes the technical changes necessary for the home visiting services account related to our assuming the responsibilities for contracting of the home visiting services that we oversee. We also have a piece of legislation specific to background checks. We have a technical issue that we are addressing between ourselves and DSHS and our access to family data. And so that bill is being introduced, and we will also have a facilities related piece of agency request legislation. So those are the three pieces at the moment.
There's a question asking for more clarification about the subsidized child care wait list, the Wharton Connections wait list. So right now, in the last fiscal year, we served approximately a little over 49,000 families, an average of 29,700 families a month. The current forecast, the June forecast, estimates that there would be approximately 3,500 families a month without subsidized child care once the wait list is implemented. And so that's what we're trying to eliminate. We want to make sure that those 3,500 families have the child care necessary.
There's a question related to interagency requests. There is an effort going on between the Department of Early Learning, the Department of Health, HCA, Children's Administration, and OSPI on a interagency request specific to some birth to 3 services. That is not part of our specific agency request because it's multi-agency, so it's not part of today's presentation. And so we might have more details on that as it's finalized in the coming days. Another question about our time and attendance system and when it will be available. We do not expect that it will be available necessarily out to the entire state, but we would expect and hope that if this project is funded because of the work we're doing on the pilot today, then we could have something in the field as early as early winter in 2017. There's a question about the conversion of current part-day slots to full-day slots.
There's no request for conversion in this request. There was initially when we were starting to draft our packages. I'll be honest, we started as all agencies do. We start with everything we can think of and everything that we would like to do. And as we scale the package down to a level that we think can be implemented, we had to push some things out into future requests, and conversion was part of that. But I think we do plan to come back to it in a future request.
Because of the challenge, I think, for both facilities and workforce and wanting to buy off, ensure that we don't have a wait list, there was a lot of competing priorities there. And the opportunity for summer programming, given both the need and the evidence of its impact, became a more likely successful implementation in the near term than the conversion. And the cost of conversion of existing part-day slots is something that we'll be, as Chris said, looking at in future budgets. There's a question about ESIT. The ESIT is not included in the birth to 3 section. The ESIT program is, last session, Dell was established as the agency of record and the lead agency on the program. We are currently fulfilling the requirements of the legislation, which is to provide a full accounting of the previous investments which were shared between our agency and OSPI. We are working in coordination with OSPI to produce those details, and we will also be presenting a report at the beginning of the session of our suggested plan for the program going forward, but we do not have any increases in ESIF funding included in our package. It looks like the number of questions that have come in are slowing down, and so we really appreciate your time today. We really appreciate your interest. We look forward to your more detailed questions after you've had a chance to actually go to our website and look at the packages in detail. Please send your questions. If you have my email address, you can send them to me, of course, but you can also send them to communications@del.wa.gov. And we will consolidate the questions and respond to them and any questions that we didn't get to today in a blog format. And if there's interest or need, we will gladly hold additional webinars so we can get into more detail about our budget ask. Because all of you are so interested and impacted by the policies and the budget ask that this agency makes, we want to make sure that we're partnering with you on these things and working with you as it goes through the process from here. I think you're all familiar with the fact that we make a request. Now the governor and his team have the very difficult task of balancing all the priorities across a very wide spectrum of agencies and needs in our state that will result in a governor's budget that will be released early this winter, late this fall. And then, of course, the legislature ultimately decides what gets funded. And so we look forward to partnering with you throughout all of those processes to provide detail and as tough decisions that will have to be made in the future, working together to try to make sure those tough decisions and prioritizations are done in an effective way and in a way that ensures the most services to the most needy children in Washington State. So with that, we're going to close the webinar. Thank you all very, very much for your time today. We hope it was informative, and we look forward to your questions and your concerns and partnering with you to address them as we go forward. So thank you very much, and thank you for all you do.